So if it's not obvious already, uh, the statement that you need organized religion, or you need faith, or you need God, or whatever in order to have morals is not what I believe. Uh, it's I don't even know how I'm going to get a real conversation out of this, because I feel like this would have been perfect for a 2-cent rant that I don't do anymore. So we'll see what happens. But it's kind of absurd to have that idea, and obviously I'm going to explore that a bit. It was just something that was said recently, and I was just like, really? That's what you believe, you idiot? Like, that you need to have... And they were specifically talking about church and organized religion, specifically of the Christian faith, and saying that's where you go to learn your morals. Now, I don't want to break down what morals are and aren't necessarily, but I mean, like, our spiritual compass. No, that's even making it too complex. Our sense of right and wrong, basically, our beliefs and our standards as to how we should treat others and how people should be treated and how we should treat ourselves and operate within the world and with other individuals. Like, just simply, like, right and wrong is how I'd strip it down, to be really basic about it. And this person was just like, yeah, that's where I find my morals, or like that's where... I mean, they didn't say it like that, but I'm getting worked up already. And this isn't even a fresh thing, but it's a stupid thing, and I just don't understand how someone could actually believe that thing. And I think that if they were like, if you stop that person, whoever that person is, it's not even a specific person anymore, but a person that says that or believes that, I mean, it's really difficult for me to believe you stop that person and say, hey, is that the only place you could really find your morals and your beliefs and your standards? That they would say yes. People do say yes anyway, as a justification for organized religion and church and God and other things, right? And that blows my mind. I don't know. It's just... I've been trying... I don't want to say I've been trying really hard. I've made a couple huge realizations and epiphanies and things in the past. Well, I didn't make an epiphany, but I mean, like, I've had one. I felt like I had moments of growth, severe growth in understanding when it comes to people's cognitive ability, and how, like just a couple minutes ago, I called this person an idiot. That sparked this whole thing. And I mean, I feel like in some ways I almost have to define that whole thing before I get into this, because I feel like I don't even know. No, I don't know how to do it. It gets too convoluted. The epiphany that I felt like I had was that, or my understandings of like, oh, you know what, like, people's cognitive ability fluctuates, and it's such a huge spectrum, and it's way bigger than anything that I ever thought before. Because I mean, there's some people that have very severe and obvious lack of cognitive ability. I would say, if I was using more arcane terminology, that they're mentally handicapped. And there's some people that you can see that, and you can interact with them, and you know that. And then there's people that fit into this wider spectrum that we generally say, like, oh, we can't detect anything specific that we could diagnose you with, or say, like, oh yeah, like, you're clearly not on my level, therefore you're like me. And I feel like part of the understanding for me is just that, like, I felt like there's not a lot of people like me in general for a long time, but I still felt like, okay, well, yeah, this person doesn't think like me, but we're still in the same ballpark, and that we're on the same level, even though we're not, like, completely in sync. And I don't just mean, like, that you believe everything I believe. I just mean that, like, we have the same cognitive ability, or that, like, we think in rational and logical terms in the same way. Some people are just not able to have certain quality thoughts. This should be a whole different conversation. I should make it one. Okay, I'm going to do that some other time. I'm just trying to preface this whole thing with this thing that I feel like you need to understand first, but I don't want to have a whole conversation about it and then do this one next week, because that'd be silly. Now I'm interrupting the flow of things. So, but yeah, there was just a realization I had. For a lot of things led up to it, and that, like, there's a way bigger spectrum of cognitive ability than I really understood before. And then it's like, you know what, like, some people just aren't able to have that thought. That there's a certain quality of thought that some people aren't capable of having. So when it comes to things like critical thinking, and like when I called someone an idiot earlier, it's like, well, how do I define idiot? You know what I mean? Because colloquially, I'm not using the term how it is, like a dictionary definition or something like that. And that happens with all sorts of things like deaf, dumb, idiot, like all these terms that used to mean something, and now they colloquially, our use of language and stuff has made them something else. But I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to define an idiot anymore, because now I'm backtracking and trying to look. I'm not trying to excuse the behavior. Oh, this is such a tough spot, man. This needs to be that other conversation, but it's not going to be. I just don't. I mean, I feel like I'm talking myself out of having the conversation. I need to backtrack and go to the root of the whole thing again. I don't think that church, organized religion, spirituality, even faith or whatever, or a belief in a God or a higher power, I do not believe that you need to have that in order to have morals or to know a sense of right and wrong that is maybe commonly believed or whatever. Everyone has a different sense of right and wrong, first of all. There's a spectrum of that too. Everyone is on a different page than everyone else, even by just little increments. Even though you could say, oh yeah, we all go to the same church and we all believe the same thing. No, you don't. You cross different lines than people. You allow things more than other people. You know what I mean? Like, some people don't drink caffeine, and some people take it very literally, and some people, don't. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going off on too many specifics. The point is that everyone has a different limit. So even, let's say, to use this specific as an example, that there's a rule that you can't drink caffeine. And then some people want to pick apart, well, what does that mean? Like, there's caffeine in chocolate, so I can't have hot chocolate, or I just can't have coffee, or I can't have tea. Oh, but I can have herbal tea, or like a little bit of caffeine's okay, but not a lot. And like, oh, I can have Coke and Pepsi because they're soft drinks, but I can't have coffee because that's a really harsh drink and it's a stimulant and it's a drug, basically. So like, everyone has a different limit. Even if you say you believe in the same thing, nobody does. That's just facts. So there's a spectrum of right and wrong as well. So that's another reason that statement is just dumb. You go to church to get morals. No. I think that how people get to a place of understanding and learning right and wrong, a lot of that happens at home, I think. Some of it might happen at school. It happens in lots of different places. It can happen at church. It can happen with organized religion and faith and belief in a higher power. It can, but that's not the place and the only place where it can happen. And I would say that, it's more important as to the beliefs at home anyway, rather than going to church. And you know what I mean? Like, you need to, it's faith without works is dead, is a popular thing that is said, and I don't remember where. I think it's in like James something or other in the Bible. I don't remember who said it and where it is, but what I'm trying to say with that is that, like, going to a building, going even to school, going to a class, sitting there, receiving a lesson from either a parent or whatever, like, this isn't a direct relation to the thing faith without works is dead, but it's just the fact that someone saying something doesn't mean anything. And you being the person who's supposed to be sitting there learning this information and understanding it and applying it to your life, like, it doesn't mean anything, usually, unless you understand how it's beneficial for you and you put it into practice. You usually understand those things by seeing how other people put it into practice. So, you know what I mean? It's like, you better be practicing what you preach, basically. So, I mean, sending your kid off to church and going to church, and then you go home and do a bunch of dumb stuff all the time, you know what I mean? Like, what are they learning? There's mixed messages going on. If you're completely defying what they're saying in church, like, putting your kid in church doesn't mean anything if at home you are doing things that are maybe the opposite of that. And that's why I say I think a lot of that learning and understanding comes at home, because you probably spend, well, maybe you don't spend that more time with your parents than you would maybe at school. Some people have, like, they spend more time with teachers than they do with their parents, just because the way things are structured, work and whatever, and who knows. So I think that those type of things are learned, one, in primarily certain age groups. They get learned more so than other times, and there's, examples, right? Like, we learn those things through examples, but then at a certain point, when you hit a certain level of maturity, which isn't always tied to age, because sometimes I think that's tied to cognitive ability, which is something I was talking about earlier, that there's a certain point where you are able to understand things and you're able to think critically, hopefully, not everyone is, And that's where you can make choices about the things that you've been fed, about the things that you have learned and understood in your youth, and when you weren't as cognitively able to use critical thinking. You make decisions as to what you think is right and wrong. You're not an empty vessel that gets filled up with school or church or your parents' words. I think that when you're young, you do get filled up with that. And that's why it's so dangerous to have people that shouldn't be saying stuff to young people saying stuff to young people. And that's obviously where, like, again, my morals and my standards are different than someone else's. So when I say they shouldn't be learning this, that's just obviously me and my opinion as to what those specific things are. But that is why I value critical thinking so much, that people need to learn that is somewhat of a skill. It is something that I think is very natural for some people, but it's also a skill that they'd even teach you in school, or at least they used to, that you should be thinking critically. Now, we want to go back to this comment that started about church is where you go to learn morals. I don't remember learning a lot of critical thinking in church. Now, that was just one, church. That was just one religion. That was one whatever. I mean, it could have been the same religion and been in another building with different people, and they could have taught critical thinking in a certain way. But I sure as heck don't remember learning much about critical thinking. I think about, there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with organized religion. I think there's a lot of things tied to organized religion that are maybe inherently negative things, but I have a difficult time saying like organized religion is inherently bad in and of itself. I think that it's very difficult to be involved in organized religion and also think really, really critically and still say you're in that religion 100%. I know individuals that grew up the same way I did in the same church, and in other religions and stuff as well. And there's a certain point where some of them, they reach a spot where they think way more critically, and they don't go and do everything that everyone else is doing by the letter. They're not a sheep. They choose to say, okay, like, this stuff doesn't make sense, so we're not going to do that stuff. I'm not going to do that thing. I don't believe in that thing. And I'm going to take the good stuff from here, and I'm going to leave the bad stuff, because there is bad stuff. And I completely respect and understand, and like, I can still respect those people, is what I'm saying. It's really difficult for me to respect sheep, but then again, that's also like a cognitive ability thing, and it's really difficult to be like, well, I can't respect you because you just blindly, you have no critical thinking skills, basically. Because again, some people, I think, choose to ignore, and maybe that's where I'm going with the definition of idiot, or someone who's being stupid or whatever, is that they choose to ignore things because it's convenient for them and they lack the See, again, it all comes down to cognitive ability, and it's really hard for me to any more seriously call someone stupid. Like, I think I have that term instead of vitriol for certain people and the way they act and the trouble they cause and the negativity and whatever else chaos that they bring, or how it disrupts my life, basically, put it that way. But it's very difficult for me to actually say anymore, like, yeah, that person's an idiot, like, or that person's just stupid. I mean, those things are probably true in some of the root definitions, but colloquially, I'm just like, man, like, that person just isn't as cognitively able, and that sucks because it's negatively impacting me in my life. That's what it comes down to. And that's just me being in a different place than I used to be in even a year ago, and especially 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago when it comes to that. Because I'm fortunate for the cognitive ability that I do have, and I don't have all of it. I am not 100%. I am not like the pinnacle and the peak of intelligence and cognitive ability. I'm just not. And some of that ability isn't even emotional intelligence and stuff like that. Like, I know that there's things that I wish that I had that other people do have, things that are not in my nature, things that are going to be really difficult for me to nurture into myself and learn. But the thing is, like I said, I'm fortunate for what I have, but it's an odd position to say the stuff that I'm saying sometimes about cognitive ability, because it just comes off really, really arrogant, and I don't know how I just don't know any other way around it. But I can recognize that there's people that just don't have the same decision-making qualities that I have, so therefore it's really hard to criticize them. But like I said, when they're impacting your life so negatively for their own selfish purposes, maybe they're blaming it on something, I don't know. Anyway, this is going off the rails as usual, but this is supposed to be about the fact that, you don't find morals at church. That is not the only place. If you do find them there, that's interesting. And I would say that the majority of people that only, or that believe that you can only find morals in organized religion, I feel that those people don't have very much critical thinking skills, and that maybe they're saying things because it's convenient for them, because maybe they haven't had an opportunity, depending on how old they are, to really consider there's other options. I just think that out of all the three places I can think of, which is home, school, and church, which is just going to be Sunday school, I think that it's not a great place to, center your moral compass around, or you know what I mean, like, because they don't generally teach critical thinking. Therefore, you generally don't get an opportunity to think about things, think about what you're being told in a lens of that it's okay to think about things, that it's okay to question things and challenge things, that just generally isn't what a lot of people's experience is in a lot of organized religion. That's, like I said, I don't want to say there's anything inherently negative, but it's really hard not to say that at the same time about organized religion. That's the thing. A lot of stuff is very much learned behavior, and that comes from people you spend the most time with: family, friends, school. This is why I think that it's important for schools to teach critical thinking, because maybe people aren't getting those critical thinking skills at home. And if we want to have, I don't even want to say a better society, but what I think would be a better society, or just better people, better humans, are people that think critically, because there's some, almost universal truths, I feel, when it comes to treating others the way you want to be treated, things like that, a lot of organized religions and stuff take that, and I just feel like there's some things that just make a lot of sense to a huge majority of the population that happen to have the same mindset of being like, oh yeah, I wouldn't want to be punched in the face walking down the street for no reason, so maybe I shouldn't do that to someone else. I could go off the rails with that, but there's some simple things that I think just, that people just don't think about enough, because they don't have the skills, because they don't have the nature, aka the cognitive ability to learn these things, no matter how much they're taught about critical thinking, or they don't have the nurture. So you can have the cognitive ability and you just don't have the nurture. And at some point, like I said, you need to nurture yourself. At some point, you have to think about the things that you've been told. And that requires, I think both of those things, that requires, it requires a certain amount of cognitive ability that is just in your nature, and it requires an opportunity to know what critical thinking even is. And to maybe exercise those things that you've either been taught or just come natural to you to exercise, challenging people, challenging yourself, etc. Man, this is a completely different conversation than I thought. I don't even know if I'm going to keep the title anymore of what I thought it would be. But yeah, maybe that's why I thought it was going to be a rant, because I was like, finding your morals at church, dumb. Like, that's really all I had to say about it, and then it went off the rails into what it is now. I just think that's a stupid thing to say. I think that statement is inherently untrue. Like, very factually, obviously, church is not the only place where you find your morals or your standards, that in which you operate in the world. That doesn't make any sense. It's especially if you are a person in a position to teach the youth, whether you're a parent or a teacher or some type of authority figure. Almost anyone of a certain age has an opportunity to teach youth. You could be an uncle or an aunt, or just like the postman. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the thing of like not always respecting your elders, not always trusting your elders, not always like, that's part of what you need to teach people, is that you need to think about what's being told to you by who's telling you. You need to learn how to check your sources, and like again, it all just comes back to the same thing, which is thinking critically. That's what needs to be taught, and it needs to be taught by everyone. And that's not going to happen. But I don't know. I feel like I started this thing off really upset in my mind and feeling these feelings that I had before, and then it turned into like this big soft thing about cognitive ability and how it's really hard for me to criticize people sometimes. But it's just I don't know. I just thought it was a really stupid statement, and I thought this just went completely somewhere else with it. And I'm trying to get back there so that I can keep this in the same subject and now you're getting all the meta stuff of what's like in here that I normally don't say out loud. I probably say it out loud way too much. Anyway, yeah, church isn't necessarily a great place to learn your morals. It certainly isn't the only place, and it shouldn't be. And if you think it is the only place, or even if you think it's the best place, I think that you need to reconsider other options and think about what you really want people to learn and how you want them to learn it. Because I would say that, you're in a position where you might want to think things through again. That's it for me. We'll see you at another time. Nope. Sorry. Once again. I have like afterthoughts. And I don't know why this keeps happening. I think it keeps happening because I went off the rails of the original conversation, and maybe they're just not flowing the way that they used to for me. I think I hit a wall at some point, and just, I don't know what's going on. But to go back to the source of this thing, there's this, I don't remember who it was. I know that it wasn't Vinny Paz, but it was someone in Jedi Mind Tricks, and there's this like one sentence and says you don't got to go to church to get to know your God is what the sentence is, and that like loosely relates to this thing, because even though morals to me have nothing, I don't even know why I didn't mention this earlier because I'm an idiot. I don't want to re-record this video. I didn't mention before, I'm like, yeah, morals have nothing to do with God. Morals have nothing to do with spirituality. Morals have nothing to do with faith or Christianity or organized religion or religion of any kind, whatever. They just don't. But it loosely relates anyway, because it's like there's that one line of like, you don't have to go to church to get to know your God. Like, yeah, you don't. This is why, like I said, I don't even want to 100% condemn organized religion. It's really hard not to, but you can have faith. You can have the same beliefs as somebody that goes to church every week or twice a week or whatever, or prays every day or doesn't pray every day. I think we focus on the fact that like you would have those same beliefs, like an atheist and someone who believes in God or whatever can have those same, not the same beliefs, but I mean like the same morals, the same like standards of living you could have. But also like if you do believe in God and stuff, like it doesn't necessarily mean you find him at church or her, or you find it at church. That's not necessarily the only place where even spirituality exists. I just needed to add that. I hope I don't have to add any more, because I don't know. I need to get right with Jesus. I meant to say I need to get right with myself and figure out how to have these conversations in a better way. I don't know. They're just not flowing right now.